Hey everybody, Josh Runquist here for Heavy Debriefings, and it's time to talk about the seminal year in my life, at least when it comes to music. The year in general is pretty crappy for me, but not for music, although I can imagine this list is gonna piss off a lot of people, and I'm very happy about that. It is the top 10 albums of 2004. Let's begin. Coming in at number 10 is Nightwish with Once. This is the last album with Tarja on vocals, and it's their most successful album, which does seem a little counterintuitive, but that's just the way of the world, isn't it? And yeah, I understand this is the very bland, boring Melvin answer. Melvin, what am I, in the early 90s? But yeah, this is my favorite Nightwish album. I have other songs that are not on Once that I enjoy much, much more. But Once as a whole is my favorite Nightwish album. I mean, the infectious I Wish I Had an Angel, it is such a great song. It's a great pop song. It's a great symphonic song. It's a great gothic song. It's just a great song. And of course, Ghost Love Score. I'm a sucker for epics. And when Tomas can write a 10-minute epic, I'm all for it. This album, just from start to finish, it sucks that it was the last album with Tarja, but at least she went out of Nightwish in probably the best light that could have happened musically, because again, I feel it is their best album. And both sides have really done their own thing, and I think they're much happier for it. I mean, Tomas and company, they're putting out some fantastic albums, and of course with Floor Jansen, who is one of the greatest vocalists of all time, is in Nightwish, and it's great to see that, and Tarja's doing her solo work, which is actually some magnificent stuff as well. But again, you know, it's neither side is Nightwish, but that's just what happens. But I really feel that this is pinnacle Nightwish from start to finish. Again, I feel there's songs that are stronger off previous and past and future albums from Once, but I feel like this is the complete package that really rolls everything into one. At number 9 is Bloodbath with Nightmares Made Flesh. And this is the sole album with Peter Tägtgren on vocals. Dan Swano switched from drums to guitar. Michael Axelrod, of course, takes over on drums. And it's the last album to feature Dan Swano, which really ushered in a new era for Bloodbath after this album. For a lot of people, this is the very best Bloodbath album, and I understand why a lot of people feel that way. And I'm honestly amazed at myself for not having any Bloodbath on this list beforehand, but that's just the way that everything seemed to work out. It always made close to my top 10 in years past, but this was the first year where it really came in. And it won't be the last time you see Bloodbath either, whether you like it or not. But Peter really did something magnificent on this album. His approach to death metal vocals is impeccable. Dan Swano's songwriting on this album, I feel, is what made this potentially the best Bloodbath album. Songs like Hear My Cry and Eaten, how could you not love those songs and those riffs? He is the master of being able to write heavy but melodic songs. And with Bloodbath, I mean, you can almost say that they kind of write the same thing over and over again, and I can understand that to an extent, but when you really dig deep enough into it, you can see all the differences that do go on within the band. And with this it did hit some more extremes, it hit some more mainstream elements, but overall, yeah, I can see why people think it is the best Bloodbath album. And it's the first one to appear in this series, but again, it won't be the last. Coming in at number 8 is one of the cheesiest power metal bands of all time, and I wouldn't want them any other way. Dream Evil with a Book of Heavy Metal. My first Dream Evil album, and it changed my life. It's one of the first power metal albums that I really listened to. I mean, you can make the argument that Evergrey was potentially the first power metal band I ever heard, but I consider them more the progressive power metal. Dream Evil is power metal, without question. And it's got that great heavy metal feel behind it, but it is a power metal band, and all you have to do is listen to the title track to know that they are one of the cheesiest bands to ever exist. If you think Manowar is cheesy, they're Velveeta compared to what Dream Evil is all about. They're the imitation cheese of all cheese. Dream Evil is top tier prime cheese, and again, I wouldn't want it any other way. Every song on here is just fun to listen to, no matter how fast, no matter how slow, no matter how metal. There's no way I can hit those falsettos, I apologize. But yeah, just everything about this album screams power metal to me, and it just does not get any better than this. If you don't appreciate cheese in your music, stay away. if you like cheese or love it, this is the album and the band for you. At number 7, we have Ramstein with Rise Rise, my favorite Ramstein album. And over the last several years during COVID, I was exploring the Ramstein catalog as a good friend of mine wanted to hang out with me and go see Ramstein in Minnesota in 2020. That got canceled. Then we tried to get in 2021. It got canceled again. Then last year in 2022, it finally happened, and I was not able to go for a multitude of reasons, and it shattered me. I heard it was such a great show, and I love Ramstein, and it really makes me sad that I was not able to see them. But all that said, I still have the 8 albums that they put out so far, and Rise Rise is my favorite album that they've put out. Again, much like Nightwish, who I talked about earlier, there's songs I like on other albums much more than this album, but this album as a whole is my favorite of their albums. I feel like from start to finish, it's the most cohesive. It's got the most amount of great songs that I love on it. It's got that great heavy feel behind it. Any song that knocks America, I'm okay with. It's just a great album from start to finish, and I think it is the album to start off with if you want to get into Ramstein. I can understand why a lot of people would say their debut, and you're not wrong for thinking so. I mean, obviously, it's got Du Hast, it's got Engel, but I feel like Rise Rise is the better album. And if you don't believe me, just go and check it out for yourself. I think you might be pleasantly surprised. At number 6 is the Dillinger Escape Plan with Miss Machine, the sophomore album from this legendary band who, when you really think about it, did not put out enough albums. I mean, every single album is fantastic, and I really need to do a backwards marathon on the Dillinger Escape Plan since they are not coming back. But Miss Machine is the first one that almost kind of felt like it was the first real Dillinger Escape Plan, at least what they started to become. It is the first album with Greg Puciato on it, it's the last album with Chris Penny on it, and it's the first album that is not almost just pure and utter chaos the entire time. Granted, Calculating Infinity and the superior EP Irony is a Dead Scene featuring Mike Patton on vocals, seriously go check out that EP, it rules. Miss Machine does a little bit more. It has more electronic moments, it has a little more industrial moments, it has a little more gothic feel, which I was not really expecting when I looked back on it, and then it started hitting me like a ton of bricks. It's got a little more progressive moments. Of course, the sound of Dillinger never really left. The absolutely insane, crazy riffs are there till the very end. But this is the album that starts to incorporate more pop elements as well. I mean, could you imagine a song like Unretrified on Calculating Infinity? It wouldn't make any sense, but it totally makes sense on Miss Machine, and it would have worked on any other album past Miss Machine as well. The band really grew on this album, and it was the start of the maturing of the band, where instead of just coming up with the craziest riffs possible, they were forming songs, and it just doesn't get much better than that, does it? Coming up at number 5 is one of the most underrated second wave metalcore bands with God Forbid and Gone Forever. This seminal album really got me through 2004 in a way that almost any other album did not do on this list. And I'm actually pretty bummed that it's only number 5 on here, but other albums just grew to be more important to me than this one. But back in 2004, this probably would have been my number 1. It's the perfect element of second wave metalcore and thrash metal, groove metal. It's got that perfect blend of growls, screams, and clean vocals. Jeff Loomis does an amazing guitar solo on this album. You got the song Anti-Hero, which I believe is about the Punisher. I mean, I don't want to fully put the farm on that one, but I think it's about Punisher. The title track is just absolutely killer, one of my favorite songs that they've done. Everything about this album just simply rules, and I wish God Forbid would have gotten the love and respect that they deserved at the time and to this day. I'm glad to see that they were able to come back and do a couple shows. I have no idea if anything else is going to come from that, but I'm glad that they at least came back and did a couple shows. I'm really going to hope for a new album We'll just have to see. Number 4 is a game changer for me. It is Arion with the Human Equation. And this is by far my favorite Arion album. And there isn't an Arion album or really an Arjen Anthony Lucassen album that I don't love. But this one will never be topped for me. And there's only one reason for that. The guest list on this album. James LaBrie of Dream Theater, Michael Akerfeld of Volpath, Devin Townsend, Floor Jensen, Devin Graves of Psychotic Waltz. Like, there's so many bands on this album that are so near and dear to me, a part of this album. And yes, it is a cheesy album, and in the very end, you find out that, no, I'm not going to give away what happens. It is something that you need to experience for yourself. But this double disc concept album with 20 tracks, which I can already see some of you already scared off by that, is truly a prog metal masterpiece. Arjen can do no wrong. This was my first Arion album, my first experience with Arjen, and yeah, I suppose there's a little nostalgia glasses going on with that being my favorite, but I also see a lot of people saying the exact same thing as I do. This is potentially the heaviest Arion album, with the exception of one other album that might make the list down the road. I don't want to give that away yet, but everything about this album just simply rules. Even if it does get cheesy, and let's face it, it's Arjen, it's gonna get cheesy, I love it all the same. And if you've never checked out Arion, and you are a prog fan, you are doing yourself a disservice by going any longer without checking out Arion. They may be your new favorite musical endeavor. At number 3, I'm gonna piss a lot of people off here, it is Sum 41 with Chuck. It is their heaviest album. It is also one of their catchiest albums. I mean, of course, pop punk is a different kind of catchy, but when you're looking at heavy music, this is a different kind of catchy as well. I feel like it's their most mature album, it's their darkest album, it's their most realistic album. Whereas other ones is so much more tongue-in-cheek, this one kind of hits you over the head with all of the lyrical concepts that are going on about personal strife and the world around us. Mix that in with some amazing musicianship, and honestly, the last Sum 41 album I like, sorry, this album got me through a lot. It made me appreciate more melodic choruses because, you know, I was really in my dark phase at this point, and I didn't want to listen to anything mainstream, and Chuck showed me that there was some great music that could be on the radio as well. So I never take that for granted. Good music comes from anywhere. But yeah, just that perfect blend of melodic heavy metal, pop punk, maybe throw in some hardcore in there as well too, and put in some real life issues, and you have probably the most mature pop punk heavy metal album ever made. Coming in at number 2 is an album that easily could have taken the top spot, but in recent years the number 1 spot cannot be messed with. But Leviathan is arguably one of the best Mastodon albums. An album about water, and it's a part of their 4-element saga that they had of earth, fire, water, and air. This, of course, again, is the water one, and of course it talks about Ahab and chasing that white whale. And, of course, the Elephant Man, which shows up in almost every album of the first phase of Mastodon. But this is where they took more of the hardcore and sludge elements and kind of pushed them aside, and focusing a little bit more on hard rock and heavy metal, and of course prog on this album. Of course, it's not what they would end up doing on something like Crack the Sky, but it was the start. I really wanted to put Remission in for 2002, but that list was so overloaded and I had to cut that one regrettably. But I could not cut Leviathan. There was no chance of that happening. This album meant so much to me when this came out in 2004, and I've only grown to love it more and more as time has gone on. I love the concept, I love the songs, I love Neil Fallon doing what might be his last hardcore vocals ever. Unless there's something he did after that, I don't really know anything else where he's gotten that heavy outside of Blood and Thunder, and you might not even recognize that it's him, but yes, Neil Fallon of Clutch. He does the bridge of Blood and Thunder. Yeah, this is just a fantastic album from start to finish. And of course it has the song Hearts Alive, one of the greatest epics that Mastodon has ever done. So yeah, if you've never checked them out, and you need a place to start, and you want something a bit more on the heavier side, I recommend checking out Leviathan. Do it. And finally coming in at number 1, there was no other album that it could have been. It is Killswitch Engage with The End of Heartache. And I can already feel anuses clenching right now. It's kind of going like this. But if you checked out my backwards marathon, you already know everything that I need to say about this album. But to give a quick little recap, it has everything that I love about metal in one little nutshell. It gets super heavy, it gets super melodic, it's got pop sensibilities, it's got near death metal sensibilities as well, well-written song structures, and one of the greatest vocalists to ever appear in the 21st century of heavy metal, Mr. Howard Jones. I'm just gonna keep it that short because I can already see everyone furiously typing right now telling me how wrong I am for even having this album on the list, let alone at number 1, so I'll leave it at that. And if you want to know more, check out my backwards marathon on Killswitch Engage. And there you go, folks, my top 10 albums of 2004. So tell me, what do you think about it all? Did I leave any albums out? What are your favorite albums of 2004? Am I right for the albums I chose? Am I wrong for my own personal opinion? Let me know all of that, and I'm sure you will, down below in the comments. And of course, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. I'm inching ever closer to 1,000 subscribers, which I didn't realize it was going to be this hard to reach 1,000, but here we are. And I thank all of you for sticking around as much as you have. Next week, we'll have the top 10 albums of 2005, which will be the halfway point of this entire series. And that feels so wrong saying that 2005 is the halfway point. But until then, or if you check out an interview, review, backwards marathon, or any other kind of video that I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, or Heavy Debriefings, as Josh Runk was saying, see ya.